FAA UAS, Part 107, Test Prep. Stop scrolling for a second. If you want to fly drones for money in 2026, you can't just buy a drone and take off. You need to pass the FAA Part 107 test, and let me be honest with you, it is not as easy as people think. But don't worry, because in this guide, I am going to walk you through the real questions you will see on the test, explain the tricky rules in plain English, and help you get certified on your first try. Let's get started. This is just a part of the complete course. You can get the link in the description for the complete practice questions with explanations, which will help you get your certification. I have also put a link to my Udemy practice test, and a special Etsy visual guide for those who like to see how things work with pictures. Section 1. Regulations and Rules, the must-knows. What you need to know. Alright, let's talk about the rules. I know, regulations can feel boring, but this is the biggest part of the test. The FAA wants to know that you are not going to be a danger to other planes or people. First, you need to understand who is in charge. That is you, the remote pilot in command, remote pick. Even if you let your friend hold the controller, you are the one responsible if something goes wrong. You have to check the drone before every single flight. If there is a crack in the propeller or the battery looks puffy, you don't fly. Simple as that. A big change in recent years is remote ID. Think of this like a digital license plate for your drone. So law enforcement can see who is flying. You don't need to do much other than make sure your drone has it and that it is working. If your drone doesn't have it built in, you can't fly in most places unless you add a module to it. Now, let's talk about night operations. Back in the day, you needed a special waiver to fly at night. Now, you can do it, but there is a catch. You must have special anti-collision lights on your drone. These aren't just the little blinking lights that come with the drone. You need bright strobe lights that can be seen for 3 statute miles. And they need to flash at a specific rate to warn other pilots. Also, you might need to take a quick online training update if your license is old, just to make sure you know the night rules. Another huge rule is visual line of sight, VLOS. You have to be able to see your drone with your own 2 eyes at all times. No binoculars, no telescopes. You can use glasses or contacts, but that is it. If you look down at your screen, you need to look back up quickly or have a friend, a visual observer, watching the drone for you. But even if you have a helper, you still need to be close enough to see it if you had to. Finally, remember the alcohol rule. It is strict. You cannot fly if you have had a drink in the last 8 hours. 0.4%. If you are under the influence of marijuana or any drug that messes with your senses, you cannot fly. Period. The FAA takes this very seriously, and you should too. Practice questions. 1. When must you register your drone with the FAA? 55 pounds, 250 grams. Anything above this weight is considered heavy enough to cause real damage, so the FAA wants it in their system. 2. You had a beer at 10 p.m. When is the earliest you can fly your drone the next day? 6 a.m. This follows the 8 hours bottle to throttle rule, which is a hard limit for safety. 3. Who is responsible for ensuring the drone is safe to fly before taking off? The remote pilot in command, remote pick. Even if someone else owns the drone or is maintaining it, the pilot flying it makes the final call. 4. What is the speed limit for a drone under Part 107? 100 miles per hour, 87 knots. Drones are small aircraft, but they aren't allowed to race at high speeds in public airspace. 5. Can you fly your drone from a moving car? Yes, but only if you are in a sparsely populated area and not carrying property for money. Driving and flying is risky, so the FAA only allows it in empty areas where you won't hit anyone. 6. How high can you fly your drone above the ground? 400 feet AGL, above ground level. This keeps drones out of the way of real airplanes, which usually fly above 500 feet. 7. You are inspecting a tower that is 300 feet tall. How high can you fly above it? 700 feet AGL, 400 feet above the tower. You are allowed to go 400 feet above a structure if you stay within a 400-foot radius of it. 8. What do you need to fly at night without a waiver? Anti-collision lights visible for 3 statute miles. These lights help other pilots see your drone in the dark to avoid hitting it. 9. How long do you have to report a crash to the FAA if it causes more than $500 in damage? 10 days. The FAA tracks accidents to improve safety, so you have a short window to let them know. 10. What is a visual observer? A person who helps the pilot watch the drone and look for hazards. They act as a second set of eyes, but the pilot is still the one in charge. 11. Can you carry a package on your drone for a friend? Yes, as long as the total weight is under 55 pounds and you don't cross state lines. You can carry items, but safety rules about weight and flight paths still apply. 12. If you change your home address, how long do you have to tell the FAA? 30 days. Your license is a legal document, so your contact info needs to be current. 13. Which way should a drone give right of way? To all manned aircraft, planes, helicopters, gliders. Human life is always more important, and pilots in planes can't see your tiny drone easily. 14. What is the minimum age to take the Part 107 test? 16 years old. You need to be old enough to understand the responsibilities of operating an aircraft. 15. Can you fly over people? Only if the drone fits specific safety categories or the people are inside a covered structure. Dropping a drone on a crowd is dangerous, so the FAA restricts this heavily unless your drone is very light or has safety gear. Section 2. Airspace, where you can fly. What you need to know. This section scares a lot of students, but it is actually pretty logical once you see the pattern. The sky is divided into different classes of airspace. Think of it like an upside-down wedding cake. Class B, Bravo, is the biggest and busiest. This is the airspace around huge airports like JFK or LAX. The rules here are strict because there are massive jets everywhere. As a drone pilot, you usually need permission to fly here. On the charts, this looks like solid blue lines. Class C, Charlie, is for mid-sized airports. It is still busy, but not as crazy as Class B. It has a solid magenta, purple, red line on the chart. Class D, Delta, is for smaller airports that still have a control tower. It is usually just a simple circle around the airport. This is shown with a dashed blue line. Class E, Echo, is basically everything else that is controlled but isn't an airport. It fills in the gaps. Class G, Golf, is uncontrolled airspace. This is where we drone pilots love to be. You generally don't need permission to fly here as long as you stay under 400 feet. To get permission to fly in controlled airspace, B, C, D, or surface E, you can't just call the tower. They are too busy. You use a system called LAANC, Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability. It is an app on your phone. You tell it where you want to fly, and it gives you a yes or no almost instantly. It is super cool and makes life easy. You also need to know about special use airspace. Prohibited areas, never fly here. The White House, Camp David, etc. Restricted areas, usually military. You might get shot down or hit by artillery. Don't fly here unless you have specific permission and the area is cold, inactive. MOAS, military operations areas, you can fly here, but it is risky. Fighter jets practice dogfighting here. They fly fast and low. Use extreme caution. Finally, check the NOTAMs, notices to airmen, before you fly. These are temporary alerts. For example, if the president is visiting a town, a TFR, temporary flight restriction, pops up. If you fly your drone in a TFR, you are in big trouble. Always check your app before you launch. Practice questions. 1. What does a solid blue line on a sectional chart mean? Class B, Bravo, airspace. This indicates the busiest airports where you need authorization to fly. 2. You want to fly in Class D airspace. How do you get permission? Use LAANC or the FAA Drone Zone website. You do not call the control tower directly. You must use the automated systems. 3. What kind of airspace is uncontrolled? Class G, Golf. This is the only airspace where you don't need prior ATC authorization to fly. 4. On a chart, you see a number like 40 over SFC. What does this mean? Class C airspace goes from the surface, SFC, up to 4,000 feet. These fractions show the ceiling, top, and floor, bottom, of the airspace shelf. 5. What does a dashed magenta line indicate? Class E airspace starting at the surface. This means controlled airspace starts right at the ground, usually to protect planes landing at an airport without a tower. 6. Can you fly in a restricted area? Only with permission or if the area is not active. These areas often have invisible hazards like artillery fire, so you must be sure it is safe. 7. What is a MOA? Military Operations Area. A place where military pilots train. You can fly there, but you should be very careful of fast jets. 8. You see a flag symbol on the chart. What is it? A VFR checkpoint. This is a visual landmark that manned pilots use to navigate. Watch out for heavy traffic there. 9. How far below the clouds must you fly? 500 feet. You need a buffer zone so you don't pop up into a cloud and hit a plane you couldn't see. 10. What is the horizontal distance you must keep from clouds? 2,000 feet. This gives you and other pilots enough time to see each other and react. 11. What is a TFR? Temporary flight restriction. A short-term ban on flying in a specific spot, usually for VIPs or big sporting events. 12. Are you allowed to fly in prohibited areas? No, never. These are sensitive national security zones like the White House. 13. What altitude does Class E airspace usually start at if there is a shaded magenta line? 700 feet AGL. The shaded line means the controlled airspace floor is lowered to 700 feet to help planes land. 14. What does AGL stand for? Above ground level. This is the height measured from the ground directly below you, not from sea level. 15. Why should you check NOTAMs? To find out about temporary hazards or closed airspace. Charts don't show things that change day to day, like airshows or construction cranes. Section 3. Weather, nature versus your drone. What you need to know. For pilots, weather is about the air itself. First, understand density altitude. High density altitude means the air is thin. This happens when it is hot, humid, or you are at high elevation, like in the mountains. When the air is thin, your propeller has less air to bite into. Your drone will fly worse, the battery will die faster, and it will feel sluggish. Low density altitude is good. It means the air is thick and crisp, cold, dry days. You also need to know about stable versus unstable air. Stable air is smooth. It usually has poor visibility, like fog or haze, and steady rain. It's boring but easy to fly in. Unstable air is bumpy. It has good visibility but lots of turbulence and showery rain. This is where you get thunderstorms. Speaking of thunderstorms, they are the enemy. They have 3 stages. 1. Cumulus, the building stage, updrafts. 2. Mature, the rain starts falling, updrafts and downdrafts. This is the most dangerous part. 3. Dissipating, the storm rains itself out, downdrafts. Never fly near a thunderstorm. They can shoot lightning miles away from the cloud. Fog is another hazard. Radiation fog happens on clear, calm nights when the ground cools down. Advection fog happens when warm, moist air moves over a cold surface, like the ocean breeze in San Francisco. Finally, how do you check the weather? You look at a METAR. It is a coded weather report. It looks like a jumble of letters and numbers, but it tells you wind speed, visibility, and cloud cover. A TARV is similar, but it is a forecast for the future, not a report of right now. Standard briefings are the best way to get all this info before a flight. Practice questions. 1. What happens to your drone in high-density altitude? Performance decreases, shorter flight time, less lift. The air is thinner, so the propellers have to work much harder to keep the drone in the air. 2. Which stage of a thunderstorm is the most intense? The mature stage. This is when rain, lightning, and strong winds are all happening at once. 3. What kind of air is smooth but has poor visibility? Stable air. Stable air doesn't move up and down much, so it traps dust and fog, making it hard to see far. 4. What causes advection fog? Moist air moving over a colder surface. The wind pushes warm air over cold ground or water, cooling it down until fog forms. 5. What is the standard way to get a weather briefing? Com or call for a standard briefing. This gives you the official, complete picture of the weather for your flight plan. 6. If the wind is 360 at 10 knots, where is it blowing from? From the north. Wind direction is always given as where the wind is coming from, not where it is going. 7. What creates wind? Differences in atmospheric pressure, high versus low pressure. Air likes to move from high pressure areas to low pressure areas, creating wind. 8. What is a METAR? A routine aviation weather report aimed at current conditions. It tells you what the weather is doing at an airport right this second. 9. When is radiation fog most likely to form? On a clear night with calm winds. Heat escapes the ground into space, cooling the air near the surface until fog appears. 10. What is a ceiling in weather terms? The height of the lowest broken or overcast layer of clouds. It's the roof of the clear air. If the clouds are scattered, that doesn't count as a ceiling. 11. Why is frost dangerous on a drone? It disrupts the smooth airflow over the propellers, reducing lift. Even a thin layer of frost acts like sandpaper, making the wings, props much less efficient. 12. What does dew point mean? The temperature where the air becomes 100% saturated with moisture. When the temperature drops to the dew point, you get fog or dew on the grass. 13. You see CB on a weather chart. What does it mean? Cumulonimbus clouds, thunderstorms. These are massive, dangerous storm clouds that you must avoid. 14. How does humidity affect air density? Humid air is less dense, thinner, than dry air. Water vapor is actually lighter than dry air, so humid days reduce your drone's performance. 15. What is wind shear? A sudden, drastic change in wind speed or direction. This can happen at any altitude and can flip a drone or cause it to crash unexpectedly. If this helped you, please leave a comment with your score. And if you want the other 3 sections on operations, loading, and maintenance, let me know below. Don't forget to subscribe. Section 4, Loading and Performance, Physics Class. What you need to know. Okay, let's talk about physics. Don't click away. You don't need a calculator for this, but you do need to understand how weight changes how your drone flies. First, let's talk about weight and balance. Every drone has a maximum takeoff weight. If you add a heavy camera or a package to your drone, it is going to struggle. But it is not just how much weight you add, it is where you put it. This is called the center of gravity, CG. Think of your drone like a seesaw. Filled circle forward CG. If the weight is too far forward, nose heavy, the drone is stable, but it flies slower and uses more battery because the front props have to work harder to keep the nose up. Filled circle aft CG. If the weight is too far back, tail heavy, this is dangerous. The drone becomes very unstable. It might fly faster, but it will be hard to control and could stall, fall out of the sky, easily. Speaking of stalling, you need to know about load factor. When you fly straight and level, the drone supports its own weight, 1 g. But when you make a sharp bank, turn, the drone feels heavier because of centrifugal force. If you turn at a 60-degree angle, the drone feels twice as heavy, 2 gigaseconds. If your drone is already close to its max weight and you make a sharp turn, the wings, props can't make enough lift, and it will stall. Density altitude comes back here too. Remember, high density altitude, hot day, high mountains, means thin air. Filled circle high density altitude plus heavy load equals bad performance. Filled circle your propellers need to spin faster to get the same lift. Filled circle your battery drains faster. Filled circle your climb rate, how fast you go up, gets worse. Finally, always read the manufacturer's manual. The FAA doesn't set the weight limits for your specific drone, the company that built it does. If the manual says, max wind 20 miles per hour, and you fly in 25 miles per hour wind, you are breaking the rules because you are operating carelessly. Practice questions. 1. What happens to a drone's performance if the center of gravity, CG, is too far aft, back? It becomes less stable and harder to control. A tail-heavy aircraft wants to pitch up, making it very sensitive and prone to stalling. 2. How does a heavy load affect the drone's maneuverability? It reduces maneuverability and makes the drone sluggish. Heavy objects are harder to turn and stop due to inertia. 3. When you bank a drone at 60 degrees, how much does the load factor increase? It doubles, 2 gigaseconds. The centrifugal force pulls on the drone, making it support twice its actual weight. 4. What is the most critical factor affecting how much weight a drone can carry? Density altitude. If the air is thin, high density altitude, the drone cannot lift as much weight as it can in thick air. 5. Who decides the maximum weight limit for a specific drone model? The manufacturer. The FAA sets general rules, but the company that built the drone sets the physical limits. 6. If you add a camera to your drone, how does it affect the stall speed? The stall speed increases. A heavier aircraft needs to fly faster to stay in the air. If you slow down, you will fall. 7. What is load factor? The ratio of the load supported by the wings, props to the actual weight of the aircraft. It is basically how heavy the drone feels due to gravity plus turning forces. 8. Does a forward CG, nose heavy, make the drone more or less stable? More stable. A nose-heavy aircraft naturally wants to fly straight, but it is less efficient. 9. You are flying in high humidity. How does this affect takeoff performance? It reduces performance, longer takeoff distance, slower climb. Humid air is less dense, so the propellers generate less lift. 10. What should you do if your drone is loaded to its maximum weight? Avoid sharp turns and steep banks. Since the drone is already at its limit, adding G-force from a sharp turn could cause a stall or structural failure. 11. What is the center of gravity? The point where the aircraft would balance if suspended. It is the average location of the weight. You want this to be exactly where the manufacturer says. 12. If you attach a payload that moves or shifts during flight, what happens? The controllability of the drone changes unpredictably. A shifting load changes the center of gravity instantly, which can cause the pilot to lose control. 13. Why does a heavier drone have a shorter battery life? The motors must spin faster to generate enough lift. More power is required to fight gravity, which drains the battery juice quicker. 14. Can you exceed the manufacturer's weight limits if you are an expert pilot? No. Part 107 requires you to follow all operating limitations set by the manufacturer. 15. What is the danger of exceeding the critical angle of attack? The aircraft stalls. The smooth air over the wings, props breaks apart, lift is lost, and the drone falls. Section 5. Operations, Talking the Talk. What you need to know. This section covers how to talk on the radio and how to read an airport map. First, radio communication. As a drone pilot, you usually don't have to talk on the radio, but you must listen if you are near an airport. Filled Circle CTAF, Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. This is the channel pilots use to talk to each other when there is no control tower. You state who you are, where you are, and what you are doing. Filled Circle Unicom, a base station that gives info like weather or fuel prices. Sometimes Unicom and CTAF are the same frequency. Filled Circle AWOS, ASOS. These are robot voices that just read the weather loop 24/7. You also need to know the phonetic alphabet. Pilots don't say A, B, C. They say Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. You need to memorize this. If a tower tells you to look for traffic at 9er Alpha Tango, you need to know that means 9AT. Now, let's look at runways. Runways are numbered by their compass direction, but they drop the last zero. Filled Circle Runway 9 faces east, 90 degrees. Filled Circle Runway 18 faces south, 180 degrees. Filled Circle Runway 27 faces west, 270 degrees. Filled Circle Runway 36 faces north, 360 degrees. Aircraft usually fly a standard traffic pattern. This is a rectangle shape around the runway. The standard turns are always to the left. If a pilot says they are midfield left downwind, they are flying parallel to the runway, on the left side, preparing to land. Finally, latitude and longitude. Filled Circle latitude lines run side to side, like steps on a ladder, but measure north-south distance. The equator is 0. Filled Circle longitude lines run up and down, pole to pole, but measure east-west distance. Filled Circle each degree is split into 60 minutes. Each minute is split into 60 seconds. The test will ask you to find a tower at specific coordinates on a map. Practice questions. 1. Ideally, how should a pilot talk on the radio? Clearly and concisely, short and sweet. The radio gets busy. Say what you need to say without extra words. 2. What is the frequency used for pilots to talk to each other at an uncontrolled airport? CTAF, Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. This is the party line, where pilots self-announce their positions to avoid hitting each other. 3. Which direction do planes usually turn in a standard traffic pattern? To the left. Unless the chart says RP, right pattern, all turns are made to the left. 4. If a runway is numbered 27, which direction is it facing? West, 270 degrees magnetic. Add a 0 to the runway number to get the compass heading. 5. What is the word for the letter Z in the phonetic alphabet? Zulu. You must know the full alphabet: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. To Zulu. 6. A pilot says they're on the downwind leg. What does that mean? They are flying parallel to the runway, opposite the direction of landing. This is part of the rectangle pattern before they turn toward the runway to land. 7. What does Unicom usually provide? Airport information like weather, fuel, and taxi services. It is a non-government station, usually run by the local airport business. 8. How is latitude measured? Degrees north or south of the equator. Think, lat equals ladder. The lines go up and down the ladder from the equator. 9. Where should you look? Directly ahead of you. Pilots use a clock face to describe direction. 12 is front, 6 is back, 9 is left, 3 is right. 10. What frequency do you tune into to hear a robot reading the current weather? AWOS or ASOS. These are automated systems that broadcast wind, temp, and visibility on a loop. 11. What is the final leg of a traffic pattern? The path descending straight onto the runway for landing. This is the very last part of the flight before wheels touch the ground. 12. If a chart shows RP9, what does it mean? Right pattern for runway 9. This is an exception to the rule. For runway 9, pilots should turn right instead of left. 13. How many minutes are in 1 degree of latitude? 60 minutes. Every degree is broken down into 60 minutes for precise navigation. 14. What does the word Wilco mean on the radio? 15. 9 and 27. Because you can land from either direction depending on the wind. Runway 9 and runway 27 are the same piece of concrete, just used in opposite directions. Section 6, Physiology and Safety, the Human Element. What you need to know. This is the Don't Be Stupid section. The FAA knows that most accidents happen because of human error, not machine failure. We use a system called CRM, Crew Resource Management. This just means using everything you have, your friend, visual observer, your iPad, the weather report, to fly safely. You need to memorize the 5 hazardous attitudes. These are bad mindsets that cause crashes. 1. Antidote: follow the rules. 2. Antidote: not so fast. 3. 4. Macho: I can do it. 5. Resignation: what's the use? Antidote: I am not helpless. You also need to verify your physical health. Filled circle fatigue: being tired is just as bad as being drunk. If you are exhausted, don't fly. Filled circle hyperventilation: breathing too fast due to stress. You need to slow your breathing down. Filled circle dehydration: drink water. It affects your focus. Lastly, LiPo batteries. These are the batteries in your drone. They are dangerous. Filled circle: if they get punctured, they can explode. Filled circle: never charge them unattended. Filled circle: if a battery is puffy or warm before you even use it, throw it away, safely. Filled circle maintenance: you need to have a schedule. Document everything. If you change a propeller, write it down in a logbook. The FAA might ask to see it. Practice questions. 1. What is the antidote for the macho, hazardous attitude? You need to remind yourself that showing off is dangerous, not cool. 2. What is crew resource management, CRM? Using all available resources, people, equipment, info, to fly safely. Use your team and your tools. 3. You are scanning the sky for other aircraft. How should you move your eyes? Focus on small segments of the sky for short intervals, 10 degrees at a time. Your eyes can't focus on the whole sky at once. You have to slice it into small pieces to see movement. 4. What is the anti-authority attitude? A resentment of rules and people telling you what to do. People with this attitude think rules are for other people, not them. 5. What should you do if your LiPo battery is swollen? Do not use it. Dispose of it properly. A swollen battery has internal damage and is a high fire risk. 6. What is the best way to prevent fatigue? Get adequate sleep. Coffee doesn't fix fatigue, only rest does. 7. Who is responsible for keeping maintenance records for the drone? The owner or operator, remote pick. You should keep a logbook of every repair and every flight, just like a real airplane. 8. What is resignation? The feeling that you are helpless and luck determines the outcome. This is dangerous because the pilot gives up instead of trying to save the drone. 9. How does dehydration affect a pilot? It reduces mental alertness and physical ability. Even a little dehydration makes you slower to react and harder to focus. 10. When should you replace a propeller? If it has any nick, crack, or damage. A tiny crack can turn into a shattered prop in midair due to the high speed of rotation. 11. What is the antidote for impulsivity? Not so fast. Stop yourself from rushing. Take a second to check if your action is safe. 12. Why is it bad to stare at one spot in the sky for too long? You get empty field myopia, where your eyes focus only a few feet in front of you. Your eyes get lazy. You have to keep moving them to see distant planes. 13. Can you use a battery that was dropped on concrete? Inspect it carefully. If there is any doubt, do not use it. Internal chemical damage is invisible but can cause a fire during flight. 14. What causes hyperventilation? Stress, anxiety, or fear. Breathing too fast flushes too much carbon dioxide out of your blood. 15. What is the invulnerability attitude? Thinking accidents only happen to other people. This makes pilots take risks because they think they are magically protected. That's it for the study guide. If you want the full PDF with all the charts and diagrams, check the link in the description. I also have a full Udemy practice test that mimics the real exam. Good luck, and fly safe.